another edition of Community Solutions Podcast. Here we are in the valley of the shadow of the Met Council and loving every minute of it. With me, as always, I am Jason Bradley, my buddy Andrew Richter.
Yep, your buddy in the valley of the basement of the Met Council, or whatever you want to call it. We are here. We still have smiles. It's still a sunny day, despite all that.
That's true. It could be raining out. Our world, it's sunny.
With a few patchy things up there.
That's true.
So when we're outside all day, we don't get sunburned the entire time.
Well, there is that. So, wow, a lot of stuff happening locally, a lot of stuff happening, whether it's at the county level, the city level, the school board level. Everybody's starting to talk this spring. It's been amazing to watch the news kind of roll in from various areas, and maybe we're just more connected than we've ever been. No,
I think that there's more news than ever. I think we're getting bombarded from every angle. You and I, of course, are well connected, no question about it, but the news is kind of like ping pong balls hitting you all at once. And of course, our job's to break it down, make the complex easy to understand as much as humanly possible.
Well,
and that's the subject matter today. Again, is going to get our blood boiling. Don't worry, I took my blood pressure. It's okay.
So good. I'm glad that you're set.
At the beginning.
Yeah. So we'll have to make sure that before you need the next installment of that medication, we're done. So this might be a little more lengthy today. I'm just warning you. Today we're going to talk about the league. And no, not the major league, not the
American League or the National League.
No, and not the American Bowling League. It's none of that stuff. Is it a league of their own? Maybe it is a league of their own.
Not even that. But the National League of their own that they're a part of.
Oh, my word. Yeah. This is only just a snapshot, and it's not as big as it really is. So, of course, we're talking about the League of Minnesota Cities.
Boo!
Some of you have heard of it. Some of you have no idea what it does. If you're in a place where you've ever been on a city council, you know who they are. You've probably attended one of their trainings, maybe more. They have a new hire training, and not new hire, but, new representative, new city council person training to kind of get you acclimated to life as a city council person. So we're going to at least give you a good introduction today, because there's enough material here that we could go on and on and on and on, and we don't like to do that. Short and succinct, that's the way we do business. So
at least starting today.
At least today. So why don't we give a little bit of background going back to our favorite year, 1913, and so many good things happened that year.
The only good thing about 1913 was the Philadelphia A's winning the World Series.
Well,
that's about the only good thing.
I've never been an A's fan.
But, well, I was when Connie Mack was the manager, even though that was long before I was born. 1913, not a year that was good on any level.
Right.
We want to be fully honest about it, but we'll get off the federal government's back for a little bit. But the League of Minnesotas was created in 1913, but it really did not become its own force until 1974, until it became its own LLC, if you will. Pretty much every city is a member of the league in Minnesota.
Pretty much.
You don't have to be. I can't find a law that says you have to be.
Right.
I believe townships are included in this in some way, shape, or form. I think they pay I'm not sure how they pay their dues, but dues. The league is funded with our tax dollars.
Right.
Let's just be blunt about that. Cities pay dues based on their population. The league, I think, the original concept, because they don't really talk about it, it's hard to find it somewhere, is that the cities could band together and would be able to use their resources to help each other fight city liability.
Okay.
So that, like Crystal, for example, much of their dues is paid for to cover insurance.
Right.
It is not. They're not paying the League of Minnesota Cities to advocate for them. That's really not what the role is supposed to be. But the league has morphed, and morphed I might be underselling that word a lot. They've morphed into an advocacy group that is pushing, again, the same concepts that we seem to see everywhere on the same cookie cutter, one-size-fits-all policies, and pressuring cities to conform to regional planning. And they claim to be advocates for local government. But when you actually read what they put out,
they're advocates for the groups that try to inform city government on how to do things.
Right. I mean, nowhere will you see opposition to the Met Council in any way, shape, or form. They do not advocate anything that would weaken them or change policy. County Transit Improvement Board, not a word about them taking a sales tax and pushing and forcing transit onto certain neighborhoods. I'm sure we'll get into all these policies, but let me back up a second. The current head, though this is another issue, the first issue with this is the conflicts of interest.
Right.
Okay, because they're governed by a board.
Which are made up of mayors and city council members all around the state.
Yeah. Now the head of this now is some lady named Rhonda Pownell. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Who's a city council personette from Northfield, Minnesota,
right.
Old St. Olaf. Now, let me ask a question. If I were a member of Congress, I can't be the leader of a NGO or anything. If I were in the legislature, I couldn't be the president of the Taxpayers League or why are these people allowed to, how do you represent Northfield and at the same time be the head of a advocacy group?
That's great.
Well,
and
how do you reconcile that conflict of interest?
You don't. And that was the same criticism that I had of the Botno partnership, is that it was made up of all these people that wanted to see, they were made up of these people that were mayors, and mayors of all the cities were on this partnership, and they wanted to see this project go through. Were they able to represent us?
Simple. They went there, made a decision simple being in their world.
Right.
They all got together and decided something, went back to their councils and said, here's what we decided.
Yeah.
That was the end of it.
Right.
The same thing's going on here. Again, you can't serve two masters.
No.
I've said this before. Either you serve the folks that elected you, or you get out of elected office and go be an advocate.
Even Bob Dylan said, you got to serve somebody. So who are they serving? And you're right. I mean, just going back even a little further, 853 cities in Minnesota. There are 833 cities that are members. So you're right. Almost all of them, plus 11 townships and 62 special districts. Now, there's another group for townships that are like that, that's similar.
Yeah, you're right. That escapes me, though, what they are. If you Google it, I'm sure you can find it. There's some town. It's like Minnesota counties. They have their own little side group that's doing this or that. Yeah, pretty much everybody is in this. And the question I have is, we're all paying. All these cities are paying to be part of this organization. Yet, who is making these policy decisions? Because they put together a task force of city staff, a handful of people who are on city councils and stuff. No citizens are on these things.
Minnesota Association of Townships.
Association of Townships, there you go.
Yeah.
So, how... So these and we'll get into them in a minute. I know you're waiting with bated breath.
Boy.
And the league has this reputation that they speak for every single city. That there's no, that when they speak, 833 cities, which is probably 99.9999% of Minnesota or something like that, is all speaking with one voice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how we can assume that somebody that is in Deer River, Minnesota, is going to want the same types of things that somebody in Burnsville is going to want, and who is going to want the same things that somebody in Pipestone is going to want. It's just not going to work that way.
Yeah, but it's, again, when we get into this stuff, my friends, I'm telling you, you're going to see the same one-size-fits-all cookie cutter stuff that you hear everywhere else. Literally,
Right.
the Met Council could sue the League of Minnesota Cities for plagiarism when you look at what they advocate here. And quite frankly, so could one political party, if I could be so blunt.
Yeah, I think you can. And my question would be, and just because there aren't enough hours in the day to have done all of this research yet, how much of what the Minnesota League of Cities is handed down from the National League of Cities? I would like to compare the League of Minnesota Cities with the League of Wisconsin Cities, with the League of Nevada Cities, with the League of Florida
Hawaii
cities. Yeah,
Puerto Rico.
exactly.
I would say in the 90% range, but worded differently. You're going to have it Wisconsin-centric, saying the same things. Wisconsin law is slightly different,
Right.
in a lot of ways. You're going to see the same buzzwords
Right.
in all of them. And yeah, could we go through each one of them, which is 200 pages long? Yeah,
Yeah.
we could. And you're going to see advocating for, well, we'll get into it, but things like complete streets. I
Right.
guarantee you will see that in all 50 states, regardless if it's Wyoming or California or Maine or wherever else. You'll see that
Yeah.
put there. You will see. You'll see local governments opposing the Second Amendment, restricting where your Second Amendment rights can be exercised. You see it in Minnesota. You see that in the National League
Right.
of Cities. It's funny they don't pick on the other 26.
I know.
It's nobody restricts your freedom of speech anywhere, or your the 9th and 10th. I'll just forget they exist. But I mean, nobody restricts your right to vote,
Right.
Anything like that. But the Second Amendment, for some reason, is optional if local government feels like it. But I guarantee you'll see sustainable development
Right.
in some way, shape, or form. It'll be worded different. It might be tailored to a certain state or region or something like that, depending on where you are. And the number one thing you'll see is this taking the sub out of suburban. That you can't have suburbs. You have to be either urban or rural. And if you're rural, you have urban cities. Mm-hmm. And there's no other options out there.
No, there's not. And, the head of the National League of Cities was Chris Coleman, mayor of St. Paul. So to think that that's not having an impact on the League of Minnesota Cities, you're just fooling yourself.
Or St. Paul.
Or St. Paul especially. And that's a great point that you bring up. And a lot of this is the chicken and the egg kind of stuff. In 1913, when the league was created, it was created by our friends that created the Met Council and in the Minnesota legislature. They created another overarching oligarchy that has to manage every part of how we govern every level of every breath we take is
Minnesota's
government.
shadow government.
Exactly. So we've got that chicken and the egg, and then you mentioned also. I guess I should say there that so we have a Minnesota League of Cities since 1913. Where did they get the idea from? Obviously now there's a League of Cities all over the place. So we didn't start that here in Minnesota. So
everybody's copying each other.
Everybody's copying each other. Also, as far as you mentioned, Wisconsin laws are slightly different. wherever, West Virginia, laws are slightly different, and that's true based on your topography, your natural resources, all of that kind of stuff. Job base, sure. In some way, there are differences, but keep in mind that as these things are being funneled down from the National League to the different state leagues of cities, that these same types of laws are being pushed to the legislatures in each state.
True. And if they can't, this is another thing that one of the things when you look at the policies they advocate, when President Obama was in office, one of the things that really bothered me was, if he couldn't get something through the legislative process, he would try to implement it through executive order.
Right.
Now, executive orders have their place. Yeah. You and I have talked about it. The president, forget who it is, forget that it's Donald Trump for a minute. The president is the head of the executive branch. Mm-hmm. So the president can make directives with executive orders.
That affect the executive branch.
Right. If you look at a lot of especially under President Reagan and some others who kind of limited their scope. Even some of the ones that President Trump have signed have been ones that reversed what President Obama did. Yeah. People talk about him having a lot of executive orders, but a lot of them have been changes. President Bush did that too. President George W., he reversed some of President Clinton's. However, what the president can't do is spend money.
Right.
That's first and foremost. That is Congress's directive.
Yeah.
And or make a legislative policy that directs funds. In other words, I'll give you an example. Let me just throw out an example. And I'm getting a little bit off track, but I'll bring it back to that just in a second. President Trump, if he wanted to, could and forget that it's Trump for a minute. Anybody could do this. They could order the United States military to go on our southern border. Mm-hmm. He is the commander-in-chief. They're not engaged in a war. They are not, they're not going on foreign soil. We certainly have the right to protect ourselves, and the president takes an oath to do so.
Right.
Okay? What the president can't do is, and maybe a little bit of a fine line, the president can't, he can do that with existing funds. He can't make directives to make a new policy or send the troops somewhere without, I don't believe anyway, without congressional authorization. So there's where the difference is. Right. He can't say, okay, I'm going to take this money in the executive branch and put it over there. No, he can't do that. So there, and again, maybe it's a fine line, but there are things like that. And if you look at the things that are going on, the policies that certain people can't get through the legislative process at the state level, they're trying to implement at the local level. And it just reiterates everything we've talked about for years now about the importance of you. Just because you have the governor does not mean that these policies have gone away.
Right.
Just because you have the legislature, doesn't mean that, that the city council or county is going to take matters into their own hands and do something that they can't get. So it is very similar to a president not getting, or a governor not getting what they want and trying to implement it through,
through administrative means.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, like, the Environmental Protection Agency, how President Obama tried to implement cap and trade. He tried to make policy instead of directing the executive branch.
Right.
And I feel like with the league, they advocate the state doing some things, but they also advocate that they can't do some things.
Right.
So it's very, it's up in the air. And the only thing I can think of is that it's politics. It's just simple politics. They want their stuff to be pushed, and they don't really care how it gets done.
Right. And like you and I were kind of talking about off the air, I mean, it's about getting the free stuff without the strings.
Yeah. Very much so. They want all this free money. In fact, to take a peek at what they want. They want more money for municipal roads. Mm-hmm. Now, way current law is in Minnesota, 9% of your gas tax money. Minnesota gas tax is about 28 cents a gallon, something like that. Mm-hmm. It is not cheap. It's not on the low end nationwide. Surprise, surprise.
But our roads are so good.
9% of that money goes into a program called MSA, Municipal Street Aid.
Okay.
And that is distributed, the formula's, a huge calculus problem, and I don't even understand it. Of course, they want more money for that. They want state subsidies for affordable housing. They want state subsidies for daycare facilities. They want inclusionary housing. Explain to me what inclusionary housing is.
It's the opposite of exclusionary.
Yeah, you can't have exclusion. They want workforce readiness programs. They want the state to fund. Now, you tell me, what does that have to do with city government? Now, that sounds to me like a Great Society program to me.
It does.
So where's the city interest in a work readiness program?
Exactly. I mean, I understand a city wanting to be vibrant, to have employers come into the city, set up shop, hire people to work in their city, collect the taxes that come from business owners in their city.
Yeah, I
get that.
You want to do that? Cut their taxes and cut their regulations.
Exactly.
There, I just increased your workforce by 10%.
Exactly.
There. I don't need any free money from the state of Minnesota. But that's the kind of thing where that's how off the rails this really has become.
Right. But I think it's amazing. I mean, when you talk about collecting money, and I want to go back to dues for a second, because I think it's important for the people to understand when we're talking about what you're really on the hook for, because your tax money is already going to the league, whether they get the free money from the state of Minnesota, from Hennepin County, from the federal government, any of that, they're already taking from your personal property taxes that you pay to your city. Most cities in Minnesota kind of fall in this range where they're, I would say, in between 10,000, and 50,000 people. So, 10,000.
Well, that pretty much covers like every suburb.
Yeah.
Except for a handful. And a lot of the big cities like St. Cloud or Fergus Falls or, maybe the biggest city in a county probably does fall under that category. I mean, there aren't that many cities of more than 50,000 in Minnesota. There's maybe 25, if that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So if you're kind of in the 10 to 20,000 range every year, $2,366 of your tax money plus 72.7 cents of every dollar are going to the league in dues. If you're 20,000 to 49,000, which is just about every suburb in the Twin Cities,
especially first and second ring,
you're looking at paying $8,074 a year plus just over 44 cents per capita. So that's a huge jump. That's a huge jump from 2,300 to 8,000. It goes even higher for the next group. If you're above 50,000, it's like almost 24 grand plus like 12.5 cents per capita. And it's just amazing to me that they're spending that much money on insurance. And they're not. It's for the legislative action.
They have employees.
For the training. Yeah. It's for the... It does so many things. And let's take a look quick. What exactly do they do? And then we'll get into the how they're doing or what they're doing under some of this stuff. But it's amazing because, they have an awards program. Mm-hmm. They get into publicity with the media. They maintain a resource library, which I'm sure has all sorts of wonderful American Planning Association approved topics.
Yeah, by the way, it's not all free.
Oh, no,
some of that
not.
You have to pay for.
That's true.
I wanted a copy. God, what did I want? There was something I was looking at, and it was $69 for me to get it.
Wow.
And I was just like, well, heck with you. That's my grocery bill. I'm not giving you that.
You should have said, send the bill to the city of Andrew Richter.
I'll give you my dues money at the end of the year.
Oh, my word.
Well, and they do have a lot of things. They have a lot of little toolkits. They have basically a handbook for cities. Now, and it sounds innocent because the beginning of the handbook, it's like 15 chapters, if I remember right, is all about, what's a statutory city, what's a charter city, blah, 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 blah. Then they get into things like comprehensive planning and land use and city codes. And you want to know why every city code's the same?
That's why.
They grab their handbook, they have suggested fees and suggested things to enforce, almost insinuating that increases the fees that are brought in. So it's cloaked in a bunch of legal speak. But this is the kind of thing that every single city gets. Every single person who gets elected kind of gets indoctrinated into this. I think the whole point of running the workshops is to get everybody thinking the same thing. This is where we're going. Yep. This is the 21st century way we're going to build a city. This is how you get the free money. A great example of that is Green Step, which the League partly helped create. They partly help push. And it's part of, you mentioned their awards banquet, it's part of that.
Yeah.
Cities get graded on how they're doing with that. So it's, again, that's has nothing to do with the original conception of this. That is top-down policies, exactly the same thing the League says it's against, because the Minnesota Pollution Control is where this originated.
Right.
But again, it's a top-down thing, but they get away with it because it's, quote, voluntary, even though there's an explicit expectation to join it and to do, they have a STAR program that they hand out. So it's kind of nod, wink, wink.
Oh. And pat each other on the back for adhering to the...
nothing with government is really voluntary. It's it or there's consequences.
Right. And, take Green Step, exactly. How much progress are you making? How many steps have you completed to get to that next level of that next green step?
Right. But it's all part of making us all the same.
It is.
Again, that's what it goes back to. Taking the sub out of suburban, making it so no matter where you live, your city has no identity, no character, no feel to it, no small town feel to it, the same amount of apartments, the same amount of housing, the same the same types of businesses, the same parks and trails, the same transit. There can't be anything that distinguishes
now,
city from somebody else.
They're going to say, oh, no, a city is allowed to keep their character, their feel, where to put parks. Having parks brings out the natural beauty of a city. It just, they think that because people are allowed to do what they want in their own way, that somehow maintains the character of a city. No, I'm just figuring out the least crappy way to do what you're telling me to do.
Pretty much. Do you want cyanide or do you want gas asphyxiation? That's basically what they're asking. No, you're right. It's all toward the same. All down the same path is pretty much the direction that they're pushing everybody.
Right.
And, again, with the League, it's done under the guise of local control. It's done under, well, local governments are doing it. Well, we're just helping them do it. We're just providing the resources or providing examples. We all know that's how they're going to answer that.
Right. But who in their right mind is going to spend over $8,000 plus whatever it ends up being with the per capita amount to not do anything?
In Crystal, it's about double. It's about 16, I think. Is what
That's with the with capita. So it about doubles it for a city the size of about 23,000. And it's more than double then when you get into a city about 40,000.
Yeah, so a city
That's
like Plymouth,
crazy.
a city like Maple Grove or Blaine would be paying probably 3 or 4 times what Crystal's paying.
That's crazy.
And remember, every time your city joins a group, there's money involved. Same thing with school. You've got Minnesota School Boards Association. Your school district's paying for that, which is you.
Yep.
The Association of Metropolitan Municipalities, mayors associations have dues. So none of these things, Association of Minnesota Counties.
Yeah, so if you
None of these things are free.
No, if you hear, it's only this much, when you break that up per person, it's not just that much. It's that much in addition to all these other groups you're paying on already.
Yeah, in addition to all the other services you're paying for, in addition to all the employees and their retirement and their health care and their child care and whatever else, it's all the same bill, regardless of where it's going or who's collecting it. It's tax dollars any way you slice or dice it.
But they're going to make a justification for that because they're providing all these resources, all this training, these conferences. I mean, they have a Minnesota Mayors Association conference coming up. They have clerks orientation conference that they do. They have their own annual conference. Yeah, exactly. They have to teach the administrators at the city how to do their jobs so that they do them the way that the powers that be want them done. This is what we've been talking about for years.
And shouldn't an employee making 6 figures know how to do their job?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry here, but city clerks make a handsome living too.
Yeah, they do.
Shouldn't they know how to? City clerks are record keepers. And I don't mean to discourage them, because it can be a big job in some cities. And some of them kind of wear more than one hat. I know in Crystal that's the case. I know our city clerk and our previous one.
Right.
And they definitely wore more than one hat. But, I mean, why do we have to have a conference to show them how to keep records? I mean, remember, you as a taxpayer are putting on this conference.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, shouldn't you know how to do your job before you get it?
Well, then they don't get all the special little updates.
So that's the whole point. The whole point is to get them all on the same page, to get the one size fits all, to get the doesn't matter if you're a city clerk anywhere else, you're literally a robot. When it comes to your job.
Yep, absolutely. And it's crazy. I mean, all of these conferences, all these trainings, they teach people how to do bonding at the city level. That's a big thing for them. So a lot of this it's not on accident when they say, we need to build this and we need to bond for it. They've been taught to do it.
Right. And it's one thing to teach somebody the laws. That's one thing.
Yeah.
To say, okay, look, here are the minimums and maximums. Here's how it works. Here's what you can do. But when you as a group advocate it, you're going beyond teaching.
Right.
Like you and I have talked about, there are times where bonding makes sense. There are times where it doesn't.
You mean like a new football stadium? Yeah. Oh, wait, no.
But that's not, if you read these handbooks, that's not what's being taught. What's being taught is nod, nod, wink, wink. You should be doing this. Not here's what you can and can't do. Because what you can and can't do is legitimate. Because there are laws, there are Minnesota state statutes that set a maximum, and it has to do with your tax capacity. But advocating bonding, and maybe, again, there's a little bit of a fine line that I'm sure they had some lawyer go through and look at, is a different matter altogether. That's pushing a certain policy, which is much different than being informational. You and I can sit down with somebody and give them a crash course on charter government or something like that, whatever.
Yep.
But we're not telling somebody what to do or what to change. That's up to them and their city to do. That's the way I see it. I got my preference on what I'd like to see.
Yeah. And we can sure talk about it.
Sure. We can answer questions about it. But I think the league goes from informational to advocacy, sort of like snapping the fingers.
Right. I mean, for you and I, it's like we can sit down and we can blog about things. We can say, hey, we think this makes sense instead of this. But when we get into a position where we're rewarding people based on what they do with a point system, we're training them in a certain way that doesn't allow for free thought to occur. When we're charging these exorbitant dues to kind of lock people into following,
and I'd like to know in their training handbook, where does it say listen to the people who elected you?
Right.
How about that as a training thing? Maybe your constituents don't want to pay $20 million in interest for something.
Right.
Maybe you should ask them first. How come that's not in there? I mean, you and I would never advocate that.
No.
So, I mean, what is it? Again, it wants council and particularly city staff to dictate how to do something. Mm-hmm. And you're right. It is shutting down freedom of thought. It is shutting down... we've seen this happen in city after city. How many things that staff recommends get turned down? Okay, forget
0.
Crystal for a minute.
Right.
How many of them actually say, no, you know what? We disagree. How many times does the council take the initiative?
It happens rarely, but it's
not often.
It's not often.
I mean, we've seen it in Crystal. We've seen it a lot with Public Works Building, City Code Task Force. Those are all things pushed by the council.
Yeah, or take the new master parks plan that they're coming up with. They're going straight to the people as they develop this plan. Do you like A or B?
Yeah.
What would you prefer? Do you not like any of this? And they're doing it out in the open on a website, which I think is really revolutionary because they're developing it with the people
and
as they go.
We know 10 years what would have happened.
Here's the plan.
Yep, here's the plan. And then they come to the citizens and try to sell it.
Yeah.
And that's very different from what's going on right now.
Absolutely.
So,
it is.
it's a model for how to do it somewhere else. Again, what's in the plan is not what you and I are here arguing about.
Right.
It's the process of, you think that's in the League of Minnesota Cities handbook?
No.
Have the citizens participate as you make it? No. It's get it. Here are the 5 things you want in it. Here's how to sell it to
You
the
need
public.
to design it for walkability. You need to design it
multimodal
for
transportation.
Multimodal transportation. You have to take this into account with water in the area. You need to take this into account.
Environmental, blah, blah, blah. And I'll tell you what's really scary is, you think of you and I have spoken a bit about how certain people, and I'm really doing my best not to make this partisan. Mm-hmm. So let me back up a second because Bernie Sanders and the new DNC chair want to prioritize local government. They realize, now forget it's Democrat or Republican. That's not the point of this.
Right.
The point is that they have decided that their party is lacking a bench. They're lacking, I don't think they are, but that's what they think is going on. Mm-hmm. And they, going forward, need to build that up. And when you look at what's being pushed by big Democratic cities, and again, I don't want to argue policy here. That's not what I'm saying. Everything from a $15 minimum wage, which is a great example. They can't get that through the federal government. They can't get that through state government.
Right.
What are they doing? They're trying to implement it through local government.
Right.
So it's a great example of how their thinking is, okay, we can't get it through somewhere else, so we're going to attack. And we all know how this stuff spreads. Mm-hmm. One city does something, the next city does. It's not an accident that it keeps going. Immigration enforcement has been another thing been talked about recently, that cities are resisting immigration enforcement, even though they're really not the ones who do it. Mm-hmm. They're trying to make it harder for immigration enforcement to happen, which technically they should be impeached for. It's not their job to enforce it, but it's obstruction of justice to get in the way. If you had a sanctuary city of deadbeat dads or tax invaders, mean, if a mayor proclaimed that, he'd be impeached.
Yeah.
But
I want to open a sanctuary city for rapists.
Yeah,
What? I mean, and I'm not calling, before you people go nuts, I am not calling
you got to do that political
immigrants
stuff.
Rapists. That is not what I'm saying. I am saying that you could pick any crime, any offense. I'm setting up a sanctuary city for liars. Whatever it is, it would be full of politicians.
Yeah.
But you pick the offense, you pick, the law that gets broken, you set up a city for people to go there and evade the law. It sounds a lot like Las Vegas for most things.
Yeah.
But
Atlantic City. Yeah.
But you go there and then what? You've got a city full of this, and I'm going to say this. Immigrants are
a magnet.
Fantastic people for the most part. They work hard. They come here. They try to add to the society, but come in the right way. Obey the laws, and then we don't have this issue, and we don't have to. I just disagree so much with I don't care what the law says. We're not going to work to change it. We're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
To me, it's low class.
Well, to me, it's a license to do that with anything.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't like speeding laws.
Well,
can I just break them if I feel like it?
Maybe I should open up a sanctuary city for speeders.
Yeah, an Autobahn USA.
Autobahn USA.
I mean, it is, it is. It's just, It's despicable. And unfortunately, it's very hard to have a rational conversation about something like that. Because people, I have, it infuriates me to no end to see cities getting in the way of stuff like that. And, I think hardball is the only way it's going to end. Mm-hmm. That's unfortunately what I think.
It is unfortunate because that's not the way that I am built.
No.
The top down should never be the answer. Federal government should never come in and put the screws to somebody and say, no, you're doing it this way. But when we're talking about federal law, not state law, not city law, we're talking about federal law. This is what they are primed to do. If the state of Missouri says, I'm going to build a new interstate highway and we're going to start taking land from Kansas and Kentucky to do it or whatever, I think that, you have a problem at that point because they're invading on the sovereign rights of the other states. Likewise, if you were to say, I don't know if I have a better example than that, but at any time where you're dealing with federal law, let's say Texas decided we're going to go to war with Mexico because we don't like what's going on. Again, that's a federal issue, and Texas really doesn't have the right to do that as much as I love Texas. So the federal government has a right to come in that instance because that's their constitutional authority. Well, you have to work within that.
Yeah, and I think with something like immigration, nobody's asking local government to enforce it.
Right.
That really isn't their purview.
No.
Even though I would argue local government enforces state and county law all the time.
Right.
And they really don't have to do that either. They're liars as well. Not to mention any names, Mayor of Brooklyn Park. But it is unlawful for them to get in the way of it. Mm-hmm. That is, I think, the dicey area.
Right.
You don't want to enforce it. Hey, look, don't enforce state or county law either. Mm-hmm. But if that's your policy, it is obstruction of justice. It is a felony to get in the way of it, regardless if you're a 375-pound mayor or not. I mean, it's just sorry, but it is.
Yeah.
Now, but let's segue this back to the league. I mean, think about, okay, under the guise of the one-size-fits-all policies, you want to hear some of the one-size-fits-all stuff.
I'm
sure you've got some of it, too.
Oh, boy.
But they've got about a 139-page, I think, advocacy, 2017 policies or something they call it. And once again, 1 minute they call for a state law. Mm-hmm. The next minute they call for the state to get out.
That seems reasonable.
And it'd be nice if they had, and everything they want to do involves around local government getting bigger,
right?
Getting more powerful, getting Now, one could make the intellectual argument, and you and I may agree with this in philosophical terms, that the government closest to you should have the most authority. That it not like going to war or something like that, but I mean, the government closest to you is the best to solve a problem near you.
Yes.
However, that doesn't mean I favor bigger government getting closer to me.
Right.
Okay. There's a balance to that. Yes, I don't like mandates coming down from St. Paul. Who does? Okay. It seems to me, for the league, it depends on which party is in control.
Yeah.
They love mandates, but they hate them depending on who the Speaker of the House is what it seems like to me. Because I don't remember this stuff in 2013 or 14. I don't remember. But one of the things they oppose, you and I have talked about this issue just over and over, is private well drilling.
Right.
They want it outlawed. Okay?
Wow.
Now, water is a basic necessity.
Yes, it is.
Okay, it's beyond a basic necessity.
Make it about 3 days.
If that.
That's it.
I don't think I'd make it 3 days. I think I'd make it about a day and a half before I just homogenized in the corner. But they want all cities to have sole authority over your water. You have to get it from them. You have to be billed through them. You have no choices, no options. Now, you tell me, how is that local control?
Wow.
Everybody's on the system. You can't get a building permit unless you are on city-provided water.
Now, let me ask this. I suppose this is just for within the confines of a city, but say you have a place that's spread out, like a Carlton, Minnesota, or, I mentioned Deer River earlier, a small community that's spread out. How do you ever have a centralized water or sewer network? And especially, is a small town going to have a waste plant, there to...
It'd be the county that would administer
or the
that
water with the filtration. Again, that's got to come from the county, but when you're so spread out and your cities are 5, 10 miles apart, 15 miles apart, how then do you do that at a county level? It's inconceivable. It's
how about my freedom of choice? Why can't, if I don't want to be billed by the city or the county or whatever, and I'm sitting, my house is on a well or something, why can't I go get that water? It's a natural resource. It's like picking flowers out of a tree. I mean, come on, it's sitting there.
Great case in point. The house I live in now, I purchased
you're on a capped well.
I'm on a capped well. I was not told it was capped when I moved in, but guess what? I found out, it's capped because that's what the city made them do at the time that I moved into that house.
Yeah, we went on the system, and it was all part of that. Yep.
But then we go through this debacle where I'm not willing to allow people to come in and inspect my house willy-nilly without some sort of a warrant. And no, if you're listening, former mayor, that does not mean that they have the ability to come and arrest me. That is just to come and search the area that's stated on the warrant. Okay, I know you don't know the difference, but I tell you this, the response that I got back from her, and I still have it saved, was that, well, you can dig a well. If we're going to shut your water off, if you don't let people in, you can dig a well. No, I can't, because you won't let me have a well on city property.
Oh, well.
And you capped my well. I had a well, and you capped it.
You got to take a chainsaw or something and get through there.
It's just the hypocrisy is amazing. And these these things that they're asking us to do from the league, let's hear some more of them, because I'm just my head's about to explode.
Here's another one.
Let's hear it.
They come out in support of what I call collectivization, because I like to call it that, which is organized garbage hauling.
That's what it is.
It is collectivization. Yeah. It is communism.
Yeah.
Forcing one provider. I wrote real recently on the blog about what's going on in St. Paul, that some people are going to be forced out of business. St. Paul actually wants greater service and higher union wages at a lower cost. That's why they can't find one provider to do it. And it's been almost a year. I think it was the summer of 9 months or so, and they still haven't come to an agreement because they can't. Providers say, look, we can't do this, and the big providers want nothing to do with it because they don't want to have to unionize. So they said, no, we're not going to even provide a service in your city. But the league comes out in support of organized garbage hauling. Now, again, they cloak it in city choice.
Right.
But what you're really doing is you're allowing the cities to take over a private business and dictate it, that only a monopoly, a legal monopoly. You're in favor of people having no options. Now, you and I have talked about this on TV. We've talked about it on radio. We've talked about it on podcasts. When I lived in Crystal, I went through this. I had somebody come in. I won't say the companies. It's not important. But they came in and sat down in my kitchen and talked to me about my garbage service.
Right.
And I had used the same one that my dad had used when he lived there. I really didn't look. I didn't shop. I just took over the billing when he moved. And guess what? They came in. They beat the price. I gave them an opportunity to do it. Now, in retrospect, I should have probably called my current provider and see if they could have beaten it.
Yeah.
But truth was, I had been paying them for 2 years, never heard from them. So they came in, and I had that freedom of choice to go and provide somebody, save me money, and you're not going to have that in these cities. You're going to get what you're given.
Yes.
Now, imagine if in a city there was one place to buy a hamburger, or there was one place to, buy a pair of underwear. What would happen to the price of that? It would skyrocket because there's no market forces holding that price back.
Right.
So what's going to happen? You're going to get what you're given, and that just like your electric bill or your water, it will never go down ever, and it will slowly just increase over time.
Right.
And you're just going to grab your ankles every time you get that bill.
Well, and it's exactly the way it happens now in the free market, where they take it in the shorts. They take their losses for a short amount of time, and the price goes up. But then you change carriers.
Yeah.
This time you're locked in. You don't have an ability to change. And they have figured out, okay, how long are we willing to lose money? Where's our break-even point? And at one point do we finally start making a profit?
Right. It's the money versus all the constituents that we have.
Right.
One company doing the entire city of St. Paul with all 250,000 people is going to find out how they can make money and provide it at a certain price. They may have to stay at one price for a while, but eventually they have a fiduciary responsibility to make money.
As a business, they do, and I'm not blaming them for that. I'm blaming the governments for bringing in one carrier, restricting everybody else. Therefore, they're actually killing business because the little guys don't have a chance.
Yeah, I know. And if you care, a lot of people use the environment again as a reason to grow the size of government. But, some of these bigger companies aren't the most environmentally friendly, if that's what you're advocating.
There's a lot of these small offshoots now that are all about the environmentalism of collecting garbage.
Yeah, or they do a better job recycling. Some recycle more things than others. But again, it's essential that people have options and not have it dictated to them. How about this?
Okay.
Here's a little contradiction. They've taken a stand against e-cigarettes, and they want a statewide law against e-cigarettes, which is strange. I thought they were all about locals
Right.
deciding east. Now, Hennepin County has done something which these cities should be opposing.
Right.
They should oppose what Hennepin County did. Hey, wait a minute. Why don't you tell the cities what to do here? We'll go to our own conclusion. Oh, no. If it's e-cigs, it's okay with the league to make a policy banning them. This is for people trying to quit smoking, trying to stop smoking. Isn't that what we want? Isn't that what we're told by the stillaproblem.org people? That we have to, make them $50 a pack? I mean, and the government collecting all the money, by the way. I mean, why is it they want a state law in this case? They mention nothing about the law in Hennepin County.
Right.
And that county shouldn't be doing that. And yet they're advocating a one-size-fits-all law. Well, why don't they advocate that every city gets to decide for themselves what they're going to do with e-cigs?
And that's the thing that we've always argued, is that there has to be some sort of continuity in not just what you're asking for, but what the manner is behind how you're getting there. That if freedom is good in this instance, isn't freedom good here? If you're allowing for small government here, isn't small government good here? And there's none of that. There are no principles that they adhere to. It is all just, hey, we don't like this, so we're going to have top-down government. Hey, we really like this, so we're going to give more freedom to the cities to do that.
And advocate for the state not to get involved.
Right.
I mean, and again, like we've mentioned before, there are legitimate reasons for the state government to do something.
Absolutely.
I've said this before. I think election law is one of them.
Yes.
I don't like odd year elections. I don't like ranked choice voting. I don't think it's right that our voting is subject to a city's whim. I just think that that's if voting is a right, which it is,
right,
that right can't be flexible based on whether I live in Crystal or New Hope or Champlin or
right.
It should be uniform. And so I'm not, because one of the things they advocate is ranked choice voting. Now, again,
of course,
they cloak it in, well, every city should be able to decide for themselves.
Right.
But that's basically an endorsement of ranked choice voting. Because one of the inconsistencies is, and this is true, that charter cities and statutory cities do have different laws concerning ranked choice voting. And, okay, fine, consistency in that. But, I mean, again, why is it that my voting is different in one city than in another? Again, voting's a right. It's something that we all have, no matter what our income, no matter what our race, that we all have one vote to make for people in our area and above. Right. And when you take something like ranked choice voting, you think of all the spoiled ballots, and you think of, you rank choice vote for the city, but you don't for Congress or something. I mean, it's beyond silly. And I don't get how that is. I don't get how we vote being a local government issue.
Right.
How we vote is how we vote. So that's one where I just, and maybe I sound like a hypocrite when I say that, but I don't think so. I think when it comes to things like voting, that's something that should be the same everywhere.
Well, it comes through the Secretary of State.
Exactly. It's in the Minnesota Constitution.
Yes, it is.
And the U.S. Constitution. And how we vote is, again, flexible and up to somebody's whim. Yeah,
and again, if we don't like the Constitution, we work to change it.
Yeah.
We don't just do something else.
Right. And that's another point, too. You're just undermining the law rather than working to change it. Whatever you can't get through St. Paul, you try to get through at City Council. Yeah, I mean, without a doubt. I mean, other things they advocate for, complete streets. There's another thing. Complete streets everywhere, funded, not necessarily by cities. Now, if cities want to have complete streets and your residents want it and you want to pay for it, that's a different issue to me.
Right.
But to make a one-size-fits-all Everybody has to have it. And then to demand that the state and county government pay for it, I mean, that's ludicrous.
Yeah. Yeah, it's terrible, and I think we do need to make a distinction here when we're talking about this. There are certain things that belong to the federal government. There are certain things that belong to the state government as mandated by their constitutions. There are a whole bunch of things that are not dictated in those things, and those things should be left to cities, and I think it is up to cities to stand up to a county or state government and do their own thing and not do what's being prescribed when it's not something that's in their constitution. There are laws that I believe at the federal level, when you look at U.S. code at the state level, when you look at our repository of laws at the state level, that go against the constitutional powers that have been ascribed to them, and we need to...
The cities need to be a check in that.
They do.
Yeah, they are. But I think that they can't... I guess the problem that I've always had is they can't demand stuff from the state and county and feds and then demand that the feds butt out. Right. I mean, it's like they want everything for nothing.
Yeah.
And we all know that there's no way that that's ever going to happen. Like, look, if a city came up and said, you know what, we're not going to take LGA, we're not going to take federal money, we aren't going to take MSA, we don't want your para reimbursement, you know what, that city can go do whatever they want to then.
Pretty much.
I have no issue with that at all. They want to put in a complete street, fine. You know what, they want to oppose fireworks, fine with me. But what the league really wants, they want a blank check, which nobody should get for any reason.
Right. They want a blank check to push their pet issues.
Yeah, and I mean, and again, if that blank check comes from your constituents, okay, and your constituents only, then you can go live in your own little island.
Yeah.
So, but I'll even take it a step further. Now, you tell me. So this is really scary. Under their tax policies, one of the things they want to do, and you and I talked about this off air, they want to weaken budget laws in Minnesota. Now, this is really scary, folks. Under Minnesota state law, and again, the state law only mandates. Sometimes we've lived under levy limits. We aren't right now, but levy limits did happen in the late in the Pawlenty administration.
Okay.
And I think they happened again under Dayton. It seems when we have split government, levy limits seem to happen a lot. And they're there for 2 years, and then they're gone.
Yeah.
And levy limits are something that I usually oppose. I mean, I think local government should be able to vote on things like that. But under state law, the preliminary budget has to be submitted to your county by September 30th every year. That's the statement you get in November about your property taxes. They finalize them in December, and the final numbers are what you get in March.
Right.
If you escrow, you don't. I remember I used to literally write a check, but you don't make these payments the way they're laid out, because technically there's a May payment and an October payment. That's when the property taxes are actually due. And when you submit a preliminary budget, this is just for operating. Well, you and I all know what that doesn't cover on the CAFR.
Right.
That the number that you come up with for your preliminary, you can't go over that number on your final. So I'll just pretend. Let's say City X passes a preliminary levy in September of $10 million. When it comes to their full actual levy in December, they can still pass it for $10 million, but they can't go over that. They can pass it for 9.7. A lot of cities reduce it a little bit, not much.
Yeah.
Preliminary levy is usually close to what happens. They may lower. They'll get some more exact figures for the following year. It's a little screwy because state budget is July to June.
Yeah.
It's a little screwy. That's why the comprehensive annual financial report's on a different time because of the auditor's office. But what they want to do, what the league is mandating, the state has very few exceptions to that. Basically, a natural disaster has to happen for a governor has to declare a state of emergency or something before you can go over that preliminary levy.
Right.
The league wants to remove that. They want to make the preliminary levy pretty. And again, it's worded in a bunch of words that you have to look up in the dictionary. I mean, the way I'm reading it is that they can go over that levy by a certain amount. That preliminary levy is pretty much useless. Now, you talk about something scary. You get a tax bill in November and you think it's high. One in March is always lower or the same.
Right.
You can get one in March, it's higher.
Oh.
Why have a preliminary levy if they can just go over it?
Yeah.
The whole point of a preliminary levy is to go through that budget and get them to do the hard work.
Right.
And not just say, oh, well, preliminary budget is not supposed to be symbolic.
No.
It's supposed to mean something.
And where else in the world does that work? It's like, all right, son, here's $20 to put some gas in the car and go get something to eat with your buddies. Hey, Dad, I need $30 because I decided to
Where's your credit card?
I decided to buy some shoes or,
Yeah, your boss at work. Here's what I'm paying you, $800 a week. Well, do you come to him with a bill for $1,000 and say, well, say I overspent you. You owe me a little bit more money. I mean, you throw your arms in the air. And, I mean, to me, those are, again, the state isn't saying you can't spend something. They're just saying you have to set a maximum of what to spend. What's unreasonable about that? And this, I mean, and here's the thing too. That would apply to counties. That would apply to schools because they're all governed under municipal law. It's not just cities.
Yeah.
So if that gets undone, your county, Three Rivers Park District, school board, all would get that lifted. Guess what? They're all going to find an excuse. Oh, yeah, we get to paint the wall now, or we get we get to whatever. I mean, so buy those chairs for the office or something like that.
Yeah, and the way we budget is already broken, and then to add that on top of it, where it's like the work that you do doesn't even matter. Your slush fund isn't big enough for what you might want to do. Hey, let's raise it up another few million.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, you mentioned bonding laws earlier. One of the things they want to do is weaken bonding laws.
Oh, good.
There's some, and again, this depends if you're a statutory or a charter city. Okay. I'm not going to quote it because I can't remember. In Crystal, everything is laid out in the charter.
Yes.
I don't recall. Some bonding requires a supermajority. Same thing in statutory law.
Right.
I think it's, it would depend how many people are on your council, but some bonding requires more than just a 3-2 or a 4-3 vote.
Right.
They want to weaken that and make it so a simple majority can bond. But like in the Crystal City Charter, general obligation bonds and lease revenue bonds have a different threshold. It's harder to pass bonds in Crystal than it is in some other places.
As hard as it can be when you have 7 people that sit in work sessions and figure it all out beforehand.
Yeah, I know. It's hard enough. But, so they want to make it easier, I should say, to pass bonding.
Right.
And, again, like you and I talked about, there's a time and a place for that. There are times, you come home and the refrigerator doesn't work anymore. You may have to throw that on a credit card. That's what the credit card's for. You blow a tire. I mean, there are some things you have to pay for that you can't plan everything.
Right.
But to weaken laws, to make bonding easier, that sounds like more and more debt, more and more interest being paid.
Yeah.
more and more taxes being paid, doesn't it? Isn't it a backdoor
That's
tax?
exactly what that is, yeah.
Here's a few other beauties. They demand more. You tell me what this has to do with city issues. More consistent library funding. Aren't libraries run by the county?
They're supposed to be. That's what Hennepin County Library.
How about this one? You tell me what this has to do with local government. Supporting a gas tax increase.
Well, part of that gas tax is supposed to go to the cities to repair roads, but we all know where it's going.
No, it's going to bike paths and
Light rail.
And they also want to expand the ability of local governments to implement their own sales tax. Right now in Minnesota, there are, I think, like 5 cities that could implement their own sales tax.
Yeah.
I don't know what the threshold is for. I know that Minneapolis and St. Paul have their own.
Yes, they do.
And I'm guessing that Duluth probably does. I don't know if they do or not, but I'm pretty certain they have the authority to. And there may be a Rochester. There might be a handful of other cities. I don't know what it is. But they want that to be expanded.
Yeah.
That Crystal could have its own sales tax, and Plymouth could have their own sales tax, and Coon Rapids could have their own sales tax. I mean, I just all sorts of, it just sounds like if there's something to tax, they want the cities to be able to do it.
Right.
Now, again, you might come back with, well, local control, right? Isn't that
right?
Local control. Well, sales tax is a state law.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not. We have a Minnesota sales tax, and everybody else can just add whatever they want to it. I mean, you go down that road. Where does it end? Can cities implement their own income tax and their own FICA tax and their own? I mean, again, this is all cloaked up under local control. At the same time, we're going to get blood dry if every level of government can just take any tax they want to.
Absolutely.
And don't tell me, don't give me this crap, you people out there, about well, it's local control to implement a sales tax. It's local control to implement a gas tax. They're getting gas tax money already.
That's true.
Okay? They're getting their handout. So you want to take no federal money, no state money, no county money, go implement your sales tax then. I mean, why is that unreasonable?
Here's a better idea. Live within your means. Stop spending so much money. How about that? Don't spend what you don't have.
Yeah, you know what they'd give you for that? A blank stare. Huh? What? What's that? What's that concept? Never heard of it.
That's for sure.
Yes, I mean this is, but again, the bigger thing I want to hit home, okay, is that things that are getting stopped in St. Paul or Washington are not dead. Okay.
Oh no.
They are. The people are going to go somewhere to push something. They're not just going to go home. Well, didn't get our $15 million minimum. I mean, why not make it $500 an hour? Let's make everybody rich then, huh? Yeah. Well, why not do that? I mean, these policies aren't going away just because they're not getting passed at the state or federal levels. We got to watch out for that.
No, it's true. They tend to go underground. They go back to the think tanks. They think about how can we get this implemented? Can we go through county government? Can we go through city government? Can we go through administrative purposes rather than going through Congress or the legislature? Can we get enough activist judges together to get our way? And so they have all these different avenues depending on the issue to try and figure out how to make something happen.
Yeah, and part of that is selling it. That's another thing. How do we sell it? How do we go to a think tank and a focus group and get them to respond to words? You listen to Frank Luntz, okay?
Yeah.
He's pretty good at what he does.
Right.
But he wrote a book called Words That Matter. And this guy's built a career out of polling and focus groups. And he always, one of the things that I took from him, he talked, this is a little off subject, but he talked about healthcare reform.
Yeah.
And how to talk about it. And how some people do a bad job, even though they're right on the issue, they don't frame it right. It's not tort reform.
Right.
It's lawsuit abuse reform. Nobody knows what a tort is.
Isn't that something you bake and eat? Like a raspberry?
A Pop-Tart? But it's the same thing. You see it all the time, though. It's not welfare, it's assistance. It's not global warming, it's climate change.
Right.
It's not abortion, it's reproductive rights. Where do you think that came from? It came from a think tank or a focus group? How do we sell this? Mm-hmm. And you're going to see the same thing. No, it's not a minimum wage, it's a living wage.
Yeah.
Where do you think that came from?
Exactly.
It came from some consultant, some group made that up, and they saw people responded to that better.
Oh, absolutely. It's not, hey, fatty, get out and get some exercise. It's called active living. You know, it's not, hey, we're going to ruin your city. It's called complete streets.
Yep, exactly.
It's not called congestion.
That's where all multicultural diversity stuff came from. It's words that work. Words that people either don't associate with something or they respond to differently than the actual motive behind it.
I argue that some of the best salespeople in the nation have all gone into government think tanks and how to package these things and market them so that they're palatable to people. So that when these things come out, things you would never have agreed to 10 years ago, all of a sudden it's like, oh, yeah, no, I agree with that because I agree with the concept of this or that because they use these flowery terms instead of telling you what it is.
They use a sheet of paper to explain a 100-page with children on it or animals or a waterfall or something, and it's all to trigger the starving child. So we're going to, which has nothing to do with what we're proposing. We're just putting it out there. I mean, one of the best sell jobs was that legacy amendment. You remember that?
Oh, my word.
Whatever year that was? It was a while back. I think it was 2008 or...
I think
so.
That it?
But remember how it had the legacy money with the water issue or whatever? They had nothing in common. Do you know how that got on the ballot? It got on the ballot because the advocates couldn't get it through the legislature, so they forced it onto the ballot.
Yeah.
And we had two issues with nothing to do with each other, but because all the pictures were of deer
and loons, and
mooses, and antelopes or whatever, kangaroos hopping around.
Yeah, 2008. That was the year. Yeah. Platypus. Yeah, the whole deal.
The whole Constitution Amendment last year about legislative pay.
Yeah.
Well, look at how it was framed. Hey, legislators won't decide it. Some other group of former legislators will. Yeah. Oh, okay, great. What did you do? You removed the accountability to the voter.
Yeah.
Now that's gone, but look at how they sold that.
Right.
You think they didn't hire consultants and the Dick Morrises and the Frank Luntzes and the David Rodham Gergens? You think they weren't all over that getting $5,000, $10,000 a month to sell that?
That's the business we should be in.
No kidding.
Let me tell you what.
You and I are too honest to get in that business. I can't shower that many times a day thinking about that. Yeah, but I mean and again, to bring it back to the league, it's the same thing. I mean, when we talk about issues like organized garbage hauling, we don't call it monopolistic collectivization, which is what it really is.
Right.
Taking away your freedom of choice. No, it's about saving the streets from those evil trucks that are out there driving on streets, which is why I thought we had streets in the first place. I mean, there's all of those things involved in that. I'll tell you what else. The support for sustainable development is all over the League of Minnesota Cities.
Oh, yes.
Now, you and I know what to look for.
Yes.
Whether that's
hours and hours of research.
Whether that's TIF, TOD, complete streets, transit, multimodal bike paths with bells on them or whatever.
Mixed use development.
Mixed use, all of that. Affordable housing. Yep. Density is littered in this thing. They could. Let me tell you who's got a lawsuit against the Minnesota League of Cities. ICLEI. They could go through and say, "Wait a minute, we put this out in 1992. What are you doing copying that stuff?" I mean, it's all right. And here's the thing: you and I, at times, have people, at least with me, have questioned whether I'm a conspiracy guy, or questioned my sanity, or questioned whether, I get any sleep at night, or I have a bunker somewhere where I hide out, or I don't put money in banks or whatever. Let me tell you something. Everything we're talking about, every single word, is written directly on their website. You want to accuse us of being conspiratorial? Get off your arse and read that yourself. You tell me where we're wrong.
Exactly.
I mean, it's all laying right there. How in the world is it conspiratorial to report what they're putting out?
Who needs a conspiracy when it's right out in the open?
It's not a conspiracy. Too many people just look the other way. Mm-hmm. It's not a conspiracy in that 5 people are getting together and spanning this out everywhere. It's a conspiracy in that there's 20 giraffes in a room and none of them know they're giraffes.
All right.
That's the conspiracy. They don't know themselves from like I said, you could cut this out, and you're right. This could go anywhere. Anywhere, probably in the world, this could go.
Oh, I guarantee it, because as much as we talk about this happening at the local level, and today have shed light on it coming from people at a national level with the National League of Cities, going to the various states and the different league of whatever, Guam cities, okay, that's under U.S. jurisdiction. They are doing this in other countries, primarily Europe, but I mean, we do see it in some of the other places that are trying to become developed countries, India, places like that. Maybe we don't see it so much in Africa, maybe we don't see it so much in China, but places that are developed or wanting to look like they're developed, like they can keep pace with the United States, that's where you're going to find this stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, and here's the thing too. I've said this before and I'll say it again, it is an attack on, this is an open, again, I'm going to try to keep it in what we know here. Mm-hmm. Something like ICLEI, okay? Something like the Council on, what was the Agenda 21 Council? I don't remember, that met in Rio.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. This is an attack on our Constitution.
Yeah.
Okay? It's an attack on our property rights. And I'm not just talking about how tall you can build your shed. Okay?
Right.
Water is a basic human necessity. My money is my property. It's not subject to the whim of whoever wants to take it or devalue it. Your ability to feed yourself.
And I would argue, especially in this area of the world, the ability to keep warm. So if that means building a fire to burn wood, shelter, because I know there are cities that dictate how you store your wood, how
you heat your home.
Yes.
Absolutely there are. And, I mean, it is a direct attack on our way of life. And I've said this before. The remnants of communism have gone into this movement to attack capitalism. Don't joke around. That's exactly what's gone on. Look at every one of the policies. Somehow get government involved. Somehow get a monopoly control over something. Whether that's our school system, whether that's our water, whether that's our garbage hauling, it's all moving in the same direction.
I agree. And, communism has never been, in America, something that we have embraced. We've shunned it. It is pretty much extinct out of the political landscape. So what do? They go into the policy business, and they create policies and institutions that bring forth the communist ideas and then sell it, repackage it and sell it in these flowery terms to governments who go, oh, that's great. Hey, let me put in, one child policy.
Yeah, go take credit for it.
Yeah, exactly. It is crazy how we have just accepted it without questioning the source of these things.
And one thing we have to understand is the folks who advocate this are fine with it being done incrementally.
Right.
And I think that's the thing. If all of this were to change in a month, people would be up in arms about it.
Yep.
But they're okay getting paper cut to death.
Yeah.
It's just another one and another one and another one. And
they'll complain. That's the worst they'll do.
And ultimately, the wheels just keep going.
Yeah.
I mean, how big this has become, and they've sucked in groups like League of Minnesota Cities, who at one time may have done great work. I don't know when the hell that was. Certainly hasn't been recent. But, at one time, the backbone of that group might have been things that you and I could embrace.
Yeah.
And it's become policy-driven to a certain point of view or world point of view or ideology that maybe doesn't follow down a left-right path. But it's clearly aimed at doing the same thing. You won't see anything in there that contradicts anything that's not brought top-down by the people above them.
That's true. And I tell you this, that I lost my point.
Oh, that's okay.
But I guess where I was going is that it is still top down, and they don't try new things, and it's just another way to repackage. We've got these people that want to create policy, and they couldn't make it in the political world, so they go into the think tanks.
Or they're former politicians.
Oh, there's a lot of that.
By re-election, and what do they get a job doing? Being a lobbyist.
Exactly. All their little pet issues then.
Whatever little pet issue they had, they end up being, and in many cases, they get more power as a lobbyist than they ever had.
Yeah, and that's the other thing we really didn't talk about with the League of Minnesota Cities is that they do lobby. They go to St. Paul and they spend lots of your tax dollars.
People who do it. Yeah, it's not volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
They have people who work for them literally as lobbyists.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. And again, it's one thing if they have their own group.
Yeah.
You got your pro-life group or your taxpayers group or your, disabled child group or whatever. It doesn't matter. But either you're taking donations or you're volunteering. Mm-hmm. That's a lot different than taking my tax dollars and advocating for things I don't want. Mm-hmm. On behalf of 833 cities, which we know all these cities don't agree to all this crap.
That's right.
But again, it highlights the importance, folks, because they can advocate for whatever they want to. If you've got a strong mayor and a strong city council, okay, mm-hmm. if you've got advocates for freedom there, it doesn't matter what the League of Minnesota Cities wants to do.
Right.
So, again, and it's the same thing with the counties, same thing with the school districts, although it's not the same, but it's if you have strong proponents there, you can make a difference there. And I think that's the takeaway, is that you make sure that the league is not speaking for everybody. And I think we should we should have a dissenting league of cities in Minnesota.
I almost see that as what we are. I mean, we don't require membership, but I mean, who else is talking about this stuff? Who else is coming out and saying, hey, there's a different way to do things. We don't have to put in bike paths everywhere. We don't have to have complete streets. We don't have to do transit-oriented development.
Who challenges them? Anywhere. Who does it?
Us.
Yeah. Nobody.
That's it. Because I'll tell you, and this was my point before, to have somebody that would help in the litigation process for a city to go up against the Met Council, that's priceless. That's what we need. Not somebody that uses that as an excuse to get all their petty stuff in legislatively. Yeah. It's just not, it's not acceptable. So that's a pretty good introduction. I know we were kind of all over the place on this.
The discussions take us all over the place.
They do. I don't know if you had any final points you wanted to make.
I think we hit all the big ones, and we'll get into more specifics, I'm sure, in future episodes.
I think we will, because there's a lot here. They're really entrenched. Like I said, almost every city except a handful are in it. So I think that, like Andrew said, that's kind of the takeaway. How do we as cities move forward, and how do we start to decide stuff for ourselves? How do we show that we know what's going on in our communities? We don't need somebody from some national group telling some state group to tell us what to do.
Well, it all comes back to the things we've been saying for about 10 years now.
Yeah.
That it isn't all about St. Paul and Washington.
Yeah.
And if we turn our backs or don't pay attention to the governments closest to us, we leave those. We can't complain about the results, first of all, and we leave them to people who do care about it.
Exactly.
I mean, the world's run by who shows up. Everybody shows up to a presidential election. You don't show up to a city council meeting. You don't even watch it on TV, which you can do for nothing. So it's part of our plea to people.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm more amazed by all this stuff that we talked about today, or the fact that we've been around for almost 10 years now.
Well, it's true. I mean, 2007 is about the time that, and it really picked up in 2008 and 2009. And we have been around a while. You're getting old.
Been feeling it for years.
Well, maybe you have. You speak for yourself.
But, I mean, I only bring that up because in all of this discussion about the League of Minnesota Cities and League of National Cities and all these groups, Botno Boulevard Partnership, whatever it is, Gateway Project.
I was thinking about them.
Whatever. These groups have been put together in much the same manner as each other. They do a lot of the same work, some at a lesser, more local level, just kind of getting the hand-me-downs from the group above it.
And you see, we have the ability, the brain trust here to be able to figure out what's best for our communities because we live here. And so with that said, if you have any ideas, anything going on in your community that you want to tell us about so we can tell the world about it, you want to run for an office, you want to join a commission, let us know. Get a hold of us at commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. That's commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. And spread our website around. Again, that's commsolutionsmn.com. And I tell you this, the more we speak out, the greater opportunities we're going to have to get our ideas heard and implemented. So with that, I thank you, and Andrew thanks you, and we're going to be back again next week. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast, and have a great one. Let me